I want to ask the audience, who's hired people or who's in the market to hire someone right now? Raise your hand. Some of you. You're in the market? You're in the market. You're always in the market.
Yes.
I guess that's the point. You're always in the market to hire. So
I love, sorry to cut up, drop. I love that half the room just went to go pitch the VC. That was just that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, they'll be back. And when they get the money, then they'll need to hire some people, or they'll have the money to hire some people. So this is perfect. Well, I want to introduce Matt Van Horn, who is the CEO and co-founder of a company called June, which makes this incredibly cool oven, which has been described as the Tesla of ovens, and I don't mean the Model 3, mind you, I mean the Model S. Anyway, do you guys like that?
You could argue our first product might be our Roadster. It's pretty nice.
That's true, early adopters. But he's over time, and we're going to sort of get to his hiring bona fides. He worked at a little company called Apple while you were still in college. He co-founded Zimride, which is now, you might know it as Lyft, correct? And worked at Path, which was an early mobile social private network, Dig, which is a big news site, and now June. And June's a different animal altogether, but over the course of that journey, I want to hear how hiring has changed for you. But hiring, if you talk to most startup entrepreneurs, you tell me, is it when you were in the early days of a company, is it something that you worried about, that you agonized over, that you spent all your time thinking about? And, was it hard the first time you had to go out and do it?
Yeah, so I think, as a CEO, you generally have 3 jobs, period. Recruiting, making sure there's money in the bank, and steering the ship in the right direction. That's it. That's literally your 3 jobs as CEO. And I said recruiting first because if you're able to hire the best people that you possibly can for your company, then good things will happen.
Let's talk about, the kind of employment landscape always changes, and we're sitting here in San Francisco in the Bay Area. If you are a data scientist, it's probably sort of fair to say that, there's a lot of jobs coming your way, or you have the leverage. But how do you see the market these days for hiring? Where is the leverage? Is it in the companies doing the hiring? Is it in the employees' hands, as it were? Or is that sort of not even enter your thinking?
I like to think that we're a unique snowflake, and anyone that likes food and cooking will want to join June. And luckily, people really like food. So I'm very lucky that I have that to work with.
Wait, well, before we go any further, just tell us what June does. I've described it as the Tesla of ovens, but there's no wheels on it, and it's electric. But besides that, what does it do?
Yes, so it's our first product is a countertop oven, about 1 cubic foot. And I'll tell you about the cooking experience with the June. So say you wanted to cook a steak. You put a piece of steak in the oven, you close the door. On the touchscreen, we say, how would you like your steak cooked? And we actually have a camera that sits on top of the oven. We recognize most commonly cooked foods, and we remember your preferences from last time. So we say, do you want it medium rare again? And then you tap medium rare, and then without preheat, we run a multi-step cook program that our culinary team has taught the oven to think like a chef. And we'll run an ETA and predict how long it's going to take, whether you've got a tomahawk steak or a petite filet. And you can be in the other room and say, Alexa, ask June how much longer, and we'll let you know the ETA.
That's awesome, as opposed to me or people actually, in my case, my kids asking me, when is dinner? You get to ask a object that's a cubic foot long. Yeah, that's great. So that's June. And I want to get to, that's a hardware company, and as they say, hardware is hard, and you have to hire for different things. Miserable. Well, tell us then about, you're a unique snowflake. Everybody wants to come and work for June, but let's say
we are unique snowflake. The second part's not
let's
true.
just say, for the sake of argument, people haven't heard of June, or even haven't heard of Matt Van Horn. How do I start to get people interested in what I'm doing, and to take because they're taking a chance on me and my idea?
Yeah, so when we started the company, we were actually in stealth for a good, I want to say, 2 years or so. And we wouldn't post that we were even a food company, an oven company, or anything. We said we were just a consumer hardware company. And then all that we had to do from there was talk about the team and the quality of the people we brought in so far. In the beginning, that was just my co-founder and I. And luckily, my co-founder had a legit resume. Mine's not as legit, but my co-founder was the first camera engineer on the iPhone. And so he's done a lot of Apple's first camera patents. And so literally in all my pitches, that was all I had. I had nothing else to pitch. I was like, Nikhil's a genius, invented tap to focus, invented panorama, look, Google him, right? Even though he was not a known industry person, but all these things were accurate, and within his small team at Apple and the patents he's filed, he did amazing things, but nobody knew him. So it was my job to be his hype man, to try and get people through the door to want to meet me, and to possibly work on this secret project. And kind of being in stealth, we had this nice aura of secrecy, which I don't know if I recommend or not per se, but it worked for us in the beginning. And we wouldn't even share product or what we were doing until we were ready to extend an offer. And so...
Wait, so you would hire people, they would accept jobs without really knowing what they were going to do?
Until we were ready to extend an offer. So literally, we would, in the middle of their interview, after we've met them multiple times, their final interview, if we're like, okay, we're going to extend an offer, then we would share product.
Did anyone ever walk out of the room and they're like, oh, wait, I thought I was going to work on another iPhone?
No, I mean, sure, plenty of people have turned us down, obviously. But yeah, we even had one person accept before we even told him what we were doing.
Right. Well, so secrecy can work. I like that. But at the beginning, all you have are your people and sort of their reputation. So sell that. How much of your time, I mean, at the beginning, like you say, your jobs are recruiting, raising money and product, I guess. But in those early phases, how do you think about spending your time? And then, what's most important in that, in building that initial team? Were you looking in the early days of June, I guess you were very specific about the people you went after, but is there an overall lesson that you can say for those early hires and that early team?
Yeah, so I think also just as a founder, there are two jobs that you have forever that a lot of people complain about. I think you need to get over complaining about them, and that's recruiting and fundraising. You always have to do that. I meet a lot of people, and I used to feel this way, oh, I can't wait till I'm done fundraising because then I can focus again. No, you're always recruiting, you're always fundraising. That is your job. So I think accepting that is very, very important.
Does it change over time? And tell me if you can't say, put a number on it, but as a percentage, are you recruiting, and maybe you're just recruiting in your sleep, but is it 20%, 40%, fundraising is...
I like when it's 50.
Really, 50%?
I like when recruiting's 50% of my time, and I'm in that mode right now.
Right.
But to answer your question, kind of the earliest days, you have to, similar recommendation for fundraising, beg, borrow, friends, family, et cetera, mine your network in any way possible to hire great people. And so in the earliest days, I was literally on Facebook just typing in hardware engineer. I don't even know if I know any hardware engineers. And I was like, oh, look, a woman I went to college with who says she's a hardware engineer and she's a double E, and I have no memory of meeting her at all or knowing her. I'm going to send her a Facebook message. And it's like, hey, Amanda, been a long time. I don't know that we'd ever met, to be honest. And I see you moved to San Francisco recently, and you don't seem to have a job, and you're an electrical engineer. Win, win, win. And so Amanda ended up becoming our first engineer. And that was, again, me searching my Facebook network. And then my wife's cousin was an engineer. And so I'd see him at Jewish holidays and be like, I was trying to recruit him to Path, actually. And so the years of subtly just trying to recruit him
hammering away
at Jewish holidays over drinks, eventually he was like, I really like food. And then it was done.
Is it, when you describe that, you clearly as a CEO, and we talked about this earlier in Gina Bianchini's presentation, you're just living and breathing this all the time. You are at holidays recruiting. You are, out at dinner recruiting.
I want to figure out how to recruit on the Caltrain. I haven't nailed that yet. I don't take Caltrain. It's not part of my commute. I live in the city, but there's got to be a way.
Right. So recruit all the time is the other thing. I want to get back to the offer and how you, in the early days, what do you have to offer? How do you get people to yes? Because you might have an interesting problem. You probably don't have a boatload of money. Maybe you do, but...
So back to something that Charles was saying about him wanting people that are fully committed to the project. So we actually decided not to raise money in the beginning because we wanted to raise more money. I know it sounds crazy, but we decided to pretty much starve ourselves, even though we could have raised probably a small seed round, because we wanted to raise kind of that A in the beginning. And so what we started doing was we were actually recruiting people and having them sign on and join, and we weren't paying any money because we didn't have any money. So literally, I think we had 6 or 7 people and no payroll because there was no money.
There was no pay in the payroll.
And so we were convincing 100% on equity and vision and that money would come. And one of the things we did for that is we negotiated full salaries for people, even though we didn't have any money to pay them. So they knew they would get that as soon as it came in, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, but it also sounds a little crazy. I mean, how...
It's totally crazy.
I mean...
but from a, again, I don't, this isn't the fundraising talk, but from a fundraising perspective, the fact that people were quitting their jobs to work for us for free told the stories that really, VCs were really excited about. Like,
right.
You guys are crazy. How do you convince these people to not have money, yet they want to work on this product? Maybe you're onto something. And so that actually helped us raise our $7 million seed round that we did.
That does make a lot of sense. That's fascinating. But like, was it the story then? Was it, it was you guys as a personalities and
just me
experience.
Hyping Nikhil, that's it. And he luckily lives up to the hype, which is awesome. But even if he didn't, I would still hype him up that much.
Over time, we talked about how you've been from Apple to Zimride, Path, Dig, et cetera. Has your hype man role, has your ability to recruit, I mean, it's changed over time because you as a person and your experience and your resume, for that matter, has changed over time. But has your strategy changed over time? And do you see people walking into their first hires without a strategy, just like, hey, I need to hire, I'm going to go do that now? Do you need like a tight game plan?
So I think you need to know what you're looking for, right? Do you need an electrical engineer? Do you need a mechanical engineer? Do you need just a software generalist? And so you need to figure out kind of the first key important roles. And for me, getting advice from mentors and people in my space is how I learned that. So Matt Rogers, one of the co-founders of Nest, was one of our first investors. And something he said to me is, you need to hire an Apple EPM. And I'm like, I don't even have a hardware and like any mechanical engineers. Why do I need a manager for them? He's like, trust me, they are like the CEOs of running hardware at Apple. And so I trusted him. And one of our first 7 hires was our EPM, Danielle. And that was such a smart decision. And that was, again, me just trusting people that had done this before. I'd never done a hardware company before.
Right.
So I only had my peers to listen to. And that hire was incredible and led to introductions to other mechanical engineers, other people from Apple. I think about 30% of our team is Apple now. And kind of getting a few key people around that led to that happening. So
you have this network that you were able to leverage. What if, my network's not so great? Can I leverage somebody else's network, as it were? I mean, are there ways to, to put other people to work on my behalf to recruit?
Yeah, so again, I'll use any connection possible, be it, Jewish holidays, random third-degree LinkedIn connections. Like, I have no shame in trying to figure out how to get the best intro. So I got an intro to this engineer at Apple and spent a lot of time recruiting him. Got to know him really well. Like, we had the closing dinner where he accepted, and breakfast, and he was going to come to the company offsite, all these things. He turned me down. And it happens, I know. Happens a lot. But so I kind of flipped it on him and said, hey, we've gotten to know each other really well. And we both had a lot of mutual respect for each other. And I said, I would love your help in helping me hire your replacement, even though I never even worked at the company. Like, help me hire your replacement for this role. And he, was sitting at his desk at Apple. And he sent me 2 names of 2 people, including an engineer that literally he sat next to that did his job. That person ended up joining June, and he introduced me to our EPM, Danielle, who is still our EPM. So he led us to 2 Apple engineers by turning us down.
Wow, so you did in the end kind of leverage his network. Did you ever get a clear answer as to like maybe not in that case, but in other cases, like why people say no? Like, is there any through line to that that you've observed over time?
Yeah, I mean, my number one reason for no right now is Amazon and Google money. Honestly, that's the number one reason I get turned down right now, because I can't match those salaries. So that's my number one pain point right now.
I don't know how to respond to that necessarily.
I can't afford you, Michael, is what it means.
Yeah. But what do you offer in return? I mean, you offer like, look, we're going to be working on this great project. Because clearly you are able to hire people.
Yeah, I mean, it's your job as a founder to be your own hype person for the company. And for us, if we're successful, if we're able to build the kind of the machine intelligent appliances for the entire kitchen, like, that is a gigantic, crazy vision. If we can be successful, that again, we started with one oven and we have a lot of work to do. But if we nail this, it's going to be a very, very big company. And so it's my job to tell that story. And I think equity is very, very important. Like every startup offers equity. I'd say we're on the higher side of equity for any company I've been a part of.
Yep.
We offer a lot of equity to our team.
Can I ask, because like at the beginning it was all equity and now it's a lot of equity, but that's obviously a deliberate strategy. Why not offer more salary? Or is that what the market wants? Or is that what you believe, that you want people who will take that risk in return for equity?
Yeah, so we actually do so kind of two things around that. So I think both are important, especially in the Bay Area. Things are crazy expensive. But when we give an offer, we actually give 3 offers to every candidate. So it's a high cash, low equity, medium, and a high equity, low cash. And again, not everyone can, based on their situation, can accept different offers, but we kind of put it in the hands of the candidate to decide where they want to go on those 3 vectors.
So you establish the vectors and then they can choose which one they want.
Exactly.
Is there a pattern in the Bay Area? And are all your hires Bay Area based, or are they elsewhere?
Majority's Bay Area. We have 2 remote folks, but we'd work with them previously.
Is there a particular...
Both used to live here.
Right, okay. Is there a particular, like, would you recommend, or do you think about hiring elsewhere where there's lower cost and, the cost of doing business is frankly lower?
I think we're so small right now. We're less than 40 people. It doesn't make sense for us to build a satellite office in Portland or something like that, even though we have 1 person in Portland. But I look forward to new technology making that better and better. Like, remote is still really hard.
Yeah.
Like, was conversation today, I was video chatting with our person in Portland, and I was like, hey, we're going to set up a permanent Google Hangout at the desk that would have been yours. And we're like, okay, this is either going to be a good idea or awkward. Probably both, but...
Wow. When you make a good hire, is it sort of like, oh, well, we've done this right. Of course we got that right. Is it as obvious as when you make a bad hire? Like, do you know which way it's going to go necessarily? I know obviously everyone goes into it hoping it's going to all work out, but, why does it work out? But then on the flip side, why do things go wrong?
Yeah, so one thing that we try and screen for in our recruiting process is obviously if they pass their technical screens, it's someone that we want to work with. But we also do these lunch panels where it's people that wouldn't actually be working with that person. So say someone's interviewing for a mechanical engineering job. Their lunch panel of 3 to 6 people is going to be someone on the marketing team, someone in operations, someone on the design team. And kind of getting a different opinion that's not just doing a technical interview is really important. And so we had a candidate who someone said that at lunch he was talking extremely loudly, and maybe he was disrespecting this person because she was a woman. And that made it back to me. And I was like, whoa, major red flags. Like, we need to dig deep into this. And so we then had my co-founder and 2 female engineers from the company take that person out to dinner to dig deeper into this. And it turns out he was just a really loud person, and it has nothing to do with, and he's just loud, right. And also it always seems like he's yelling at everyone. But he was fine, and he passed, and he was a good hire and all that. But I think being very kind of having different groups and around the company interview more people is good.
What about bad hires? And by bad, I don't mean like they stole anything or something like that, but just like, things don't always work out. Are there signals or are there ways to prevent that more often than not?
I think something that I've seen over the years is you often hire someone for a need, and needs change, and not everyone can scale into different positions. And so I think it's good to give people opportunity to try different areas, but sometimes it just doesn't work out.
Well, so this is a good point. If you're a company that's kind of between 1 and 10 employees, am I hiring those first 10 people with an eye toward 1,000 employees? Like, this person will be great because they can grow into a 1,000-person company, no problem. Or am I hiring for those first 10 people that kind of size of company?
I think the first 10 employees of your company are going to determine the culture forever. Every time you add a 0, 10, 100, 1,000, and so you need to be very, very particular about who you hire. But then again, it's really hard to hire, so you have to beg, borrow, steal from any person you've ever met to try and find people in your network to join their company that meet your bar. And
right.
So it's a very hard challenge, I would say.
I want to make sure that there's time for questions from you guys, so let's get some mics ready if there are questions, and we can take those. I already see, question from you. Here, I'll run over here and you ask the question.
I have 2 questions because I've faced these difficulties. First is how to let go of the trust, in the sense, how do you let people, when you started making that oven, how do you let people know what it is exactly and know in your heart that it will go on? Because I've had a person who started and then left midway, and we had 6 months of slowdown. We couldn't find a decent replacement, and we suffered because of that. And I would like to know an answer from you. Thanks.
I think I missed the first half. I missed the first half of the question. Sorry, I got the second half. That someone left your company.
How do you trust? How do you let go of the concept that you had about the oven? The first time you talked to somebody, how did you know that this will go through?
That they would.
Yeah.
So how do you? It's a sort of a leap of faith, right? You're going to hire these people at the beginning and hope that they stick with it and follow through on what they say. Sometimes they don't. Is there a way to gauge whether these people are in it to sort of for the long haul as much as there's a long haul?
It's hard. So in hardware, there's so many different disciplines of types of software engineers, hardware engineers, et cetera. Something that we like to do is kind of a Noah's Ark style. We like to have 2 by 2 of every position, just in case, if that makes sense, and also because you're able to have a team that works very closely together. But we don't always have that, and so it's very hard. So it's a leap of faith, and I think just like to put a lot of time into recruiting is very important, it's also very important to put a lot of time into retention and making sure people are happy and asking everyone, like, how are you? Are you okay? How's your family? How are things? And kind of asking questions like that to people in some sort of regular cadence. So I think that's really important, and I wish I did a better job of that, but it's something that I'm trying to do a better job of. Of course, we're yeah, people come and go, and sometimes it's by surprise, sometimes it's kind of we knew it was coming, and you just have to keep going. And I think something back to the power of recruiting, like I still recruit people even if I don't have an open head for that role. So like I met with someone this morning at Google, and we don't have an open head for what they're good at, but they passed our bar 2 years ago, and they turned me down because of money, because I can't afford them. And anyway, I just shot him a message and said, hey, we'd love to show you the latest product. And so he came by, had a steak this morning, and I still don't think I can afford him, but I'm in his head a little bit more now. And so one day, at some point, he's going to join. I have confidence. And so it's kind of playing the long game with people. And we had, there was an engineer, Ray, we worked with at Path. And I wasn't able to recruit out of Path when we were starting this, and he accepted another job. And I was like, whoop, Ray, you're joining June, you're not accepting this other job. And he's like, no, I already said yes, I'm sorry, I can't. And then, long story short, we stayed in touch, that company got acquired, and then suddenly he was available on the market. I was like, Ray, you're coming back here. And instead of like putting too much pressure on him to join back then, I kind of was like, okay, I understand where you're coming from, I appreciate you. And we stayed friends, and when he was available the second time, I was like, Ray, you're coming in here. And now he works at June. And so kind of it's all about investing in the long term, because surprises do happen, and you may need to hire other engineers more quickly than you previously thought when you were fully staffed.
I also think that if Matt Van Horn comes after you and to recruit you, like sooner or later, you'll be working for him.
Well, Large Double Double has a follow-up question to that. So what Large Double Double wants to know is, he's currently at one of the big 4 tech companies. How does someone like himself find a company like June? You know, by the time they get too big, it's kind of past the point of where you want to be joining. But you're in a small team, you're working on something interesting. How do engineers discover you?
Yeah, it's a good question. One of my favorite places to recruit from is Hired.com. So Hired is this marketplace where engineers and designers and PMs kind of say, hey, I may be looking right now, and it posts their LinkedIn, their resume, et cetera, and then all sorts of companies, including large companies, but also small companies like ours, are able to see people. So we've hired a lot of people from Hired.com, and it's a great way to discover junior talent, senior talent, and so I think that can be a great platform.
Question in the back.
Yeah. Have you ever hired like a really close friend, or is that generally a bad idea?
It's a good question, and it's something that I've kind of gone back and forth with. So we ended up in the early days of June hiring a good friend's his wife. I'd never worked with the wife before, but I'd worked with him before, and I remember these conversations of like, hey, like if this doesn't work out, this could be really bad. Anyway, it worked out just fine, but like there's still that kind of, you never know. And so I don't have necessarily a strong opinion there, but I think you are risking the relationship when you do decide to work together. But so far, I've been lucky and it's worked out for me.
You've been waiting, and then we'll go right here. Gentlemen, I can't look left, so you guys are here.
Thanks, Matt, for the talk. One of the challenges I've been facing as a co-founder is like, there are certain interesting aspects of the company which we do, like AI or I call it machine learning by and large, but also I'm aware that a significant part of our success comes from not so sexy titles, infrastructure, coding, and I have like at least 12 interns from Ivy Leagues or Stanford saying, I'll intern for you for free if it's AI. And by the way, I only know TensorFlow and Python and things like that. And it's a hard time when I found a situation, even when our mechanical engineer wants to talk about AI, infrastructure engineer wants to talk about AI, and probably I'm the one who should settle myself to do the infrastructure part. And how do you deal with kind of not sugarcoating, because I want to be honest with them, but find that balance where the startup has these needs which are very not so exciting, but you need them for your success. And then it's easier to fulfill roles like data science.
I think you need to dig deeper and to find your niche that makes your product cool. I mean, I make a toaster oven, right? And we somehow recruit engineers from Apple to do that. Like, that is a lot of hype and spin, right, if you think about it. And so you need to kind of dig in and figure out what the things are that that's unique to your background, that's unique to your team's background. And I think brand can matter, right? So you just name dropped Ivy League, right? Keep name dropping that. Like we have all these Ivy League interns that come like, why are they there? What's the connection there? Why would they do that? That's interesting, right? And so kind of figure out and like use everything you've got and write down everything. Take a whiteboard and just write like, okay, these are all the things that could make this interesting to someone else, and keep thinking through that. And again, machine intelligence, data science, AI is one of the hottest things right now. So figure out how you take that and another unique element that's unique to your company's culture and background, and figure out how to hype that.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, but they get to learn through osmosis. They get to become friends with talented machine intelligence engineers, and I think that's really fun. So again, we have like we make a hardware product, but the fact that our software team through osmosis gets to learn about a hardware product, that's really cool. And so they get to hang out with our mechanical engineers, they get to see CAD, they get to do all these things. And so kind of figuring out the right way to share this so everyone's part of it. So again, not a unique thing, but every Friday we do kind of behind the scenes demos where people present what they're working on. And that's a great way to kind of learn. I remember when our first machine intelligence engineer was presenting his work, it felt like a professor was teaching a class to the whole company, and everyone was just like, I have no idea what you just said, but it was amazing. And so just kind of being around that can be a lot of fun for everyone.
You guys have the advantage, though, like you can go as academic as you want into machine learning or deep learning or whatever. At the end of the presentation, you all get to eat something. So,
well yeah. I mean, we're lucky, and we've hacked it. We've learned this over time. Like with every interview we do, we make steak and chocolate lava cake. So like if you make it to the final interview, you get a steak and lava cake.
But this raises the question that over time in your experience, and it's kind of based on what you're describing, is it easier to recruit at certain places? Like I imagine like Apple's got all this, reputation, and if I want to be the world's greatest hardware designer, I might go to Apple, et cetera. But does that sexiness or kind of what's the hottest thing on the planet right now, does it always matter? Or do you, like you said, do you need to find the thing that really makes you the most interesting place in the world?
I mean, I think the thing that everyone in this room has is anyone who joins your company as an early employee gets a major thumbprint on the company, on the culture, on the product, and everything. And you need to sell that as much as possible. And I think that is the appeal of startups. Like this person I met with this morning, who I don't think is going to join the company because they're at Google and get paid too much. But like, I know they like food. I know they would really like to join June if they could make it work. And I know that he would have a bigger impact on the product than he does because he's just a engineer versus kind of being one of two engineers in that specific field within June. And so I think that the opportunity to have more breadth and more thumbprints on the company is the number one selling point that we all have with startups. And that appeals to some people. If you're making too much money at Google, Amazon, Facebook, et cetera, then it's not as appealing necessarily.
Right. Question here.
Well, first of all, thanks a lot for your time. Okay. So the question is, how much do you delegate? Especially at the beginning where you kind of have to run, but at the same time, so the question is like, how much do you delegate?
Yeah, I think my job as CEO is to delegate as much as possible. And kind of the two things I don't are recruiting and fundraising. Everything else, should be delegated as much as possible. And so if you have such a maniacal focus on hiring the best people in the world, then you should have the ability to trust them to do great work. And so, I say to new hires on my team in particular when they start, it's like, how can I be of service to you? Like in every one-on-one, I want them to come to me with the top 3 things they're working on, their top 3 priorities, and how can I be helpful to you? And so I think empowering people to be successful and giving them the tools and kind of thinking of me as a resource is so important.
Just a quick follow-up follow-up question to that, though. As CEO, do you sit down and have hot lava cake and steak with every offer person? Or, do you meet everyone, and maybe you're at the size now where you can, but do you ever foresee a time where that doesn't happen?
Yeah, so we won't extend an offer to someone unless Nikhil and I have both given a thumbs up. I haven't had the opportunity in a large enough company where that's not possible yet, but I'm going to fight tooth and nail for as long as possible for that to be part of it. And I also like often being the first screen of an engineer that we like their resume. And so often people are confused. Again, we're still a small company. We're not like important to the world or relative to IPOing in a few months type thing. But people are often surprised, like, oh, the phone screens with the CEO, that's weird, and he didn't ask me one technical question, and it's kind of my job to be the hype person. And so before they even make it to a technical interview, if they have a great resume and we feel really good about them, I like to be one of the first calls with them just to get them really excited and jazzed to, if the technical screen goes well, to come in.
There's a burning question on Twitch by many people. And that critical question is, everyone wants to know where you got your shoes. And then there's a follow-up to that. So let you answer that first, and then let me give you the next question.
I got them at the Nike employee store in Beaverton, Oregon.
Excellent. And then there's a question from the Dylan Reyna. And what they want to know is, what are the things that a lot of junior devs don't do when looking for the first position that helps them stand out?
I think, so this isn't junior or engineering specific, but just doing your research on a company and sometimes doing homework can go a really long way. So I'll give an example. We interviewed someone this week, and they said, "Oh, I watched 3 of your YouTube videos and your talks. They were really great." And again, like, sure, that's buttering me up a little bit, but like, they did their research. Be shocked by how many people don't watch videos of me speak. And again, I don't speak that often. There's like a few videos out there, but like, just do your research. Be like, oh yeah, we saw when you and Nikhil presented the company for the first time and did this, and I liked when you said this, and like, just like, do your research and kind of flatter the people you're interviewing with. Like, imagine if an engineer's interviewing an engineer, and it's like, oh, I love that Apple patent that you got in 2005, and they're like, what? How did you know that? Because usually you get the names of the people you're interviewing with in advance. So I think that's one way to stand out. Another way, which I don't see too much in engineering interviews, but I see it in non-engineering interviews, is do work for the company and bring that with you to your interview, right? So something I did when I was getting kind of my first job out of school, I was trying to get a job at Dig. And Dig was only hiring engineers. I was a non-engineer. And so I kind of made this kind of job description / business proposal for what I would do at the company. And I just started emailing it to the executive team. And then when I showed up, I did even more research. And I had more packets of stuff that I delivered. And so just kind of delivering, kind of going above and beyond to look a little different. Like, I've had folks kind of bring spreadsheets and models and things like that. Be like, oh, I created a financial plan for your company. I'm like, what? Where'd you get this information? Oh, I made it up, but check it out. It's specific to your company. It's like, this is very interesting. And so kind of, I think just kind of doing the little things to stand out can go a long way.
The flip side of that, though, is as the interviewer, what do you need to do to be prepared, or to make sure that you've done your research as well?
I spend a lot of time Googling. So there's a lot of stuff on the internet about people, right? Like, I was looking at someone the other day, and I found their wedding registry, and I was like, I need to see what kitchen stuff they're registered for. And again, it'd be creepy if I brought it up in the interview, so I didn't. But it was it was good for me to kind of understand what type of cook they are, what type of cook they aspire to be, to kind of help give me that perspective of like, they say they like cooking. Do they really? And it's like, oh, okay. And I don't know, it's just, there's a lot of stuff on the internet. It's good to do your research. Again, you don't want to be too creepy. I couldn't have been like, almost bought you that Instant Pot. Even though I've never met you before. But, Google's a publicly available resource to see what people are up to on the internet.
Do you have advice for the phone screen? Like, how do you get through that first layer?
Do a video chat. Don't do a phone screen. I highly recommend that. It's just more personal, more likely to sell you on the hype vision if you're seeing my face, maybe. Not that it's that beautiful a face, but just, I'm really excited, so people like that. So I think doing a video chat is important. And yeah, just be yourself.
Well, but like at the end of that video screen, what do you hope that you come away with? Like, it sounds like you want a sense of the person, and you'll get to their technical chops depending on the job later, but you're just looking to have what? Like, when you walk or go away from that, what
honestly,
do you want?
when I'm a phone screen / video screen for someone, usually if I'm the first person, they're really good on paper, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's why they're starting with me, because theoretically they're really good. And so it's not my job to even have an opinion of if they're great or not, because I already think they're great, because on paper they're awesome, right? And so it's, again, my job just to see if they seem to be a good human, but mostly just sell them on June. That's my job.
You are the hype man. Questions from the audience?
I have two questions. One, I don't know if you can speak to kind of equity ranges at all, but that'd be interesting for me. And the other one is if you kind of have your MVP team already developing that, who's like your first hire if it's just you and your co-founder after that?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of good resources on equity based on rounds, but I don't have anything different to necessarily add there, but I just want to say we're on the higher end of equity for market that I've seen. But relative to the first people to hire is you need to, I think for my co-founder and I, we had to look at what we were good at and what we were weakest at. And so kind of I had the baseline of business side, and Nikhil had the baseline of, he studied electrical engineering and computer science and worked on the iPhone software stack. Neither of us, we had this huge gaping hole for mechanical, right? And so from the start of the company, hiring our first mechanical engineer was the most critical thing we had to do because Nikhil and I knew nothing about it. And so we kept that bar extremely high. It was, maybe the position that we interviewed the most for in the beginning and interviewed the most people, and people rejected us, and we said no to people, and kind of hiring our first mechanical engineer, Nico, ended up being a very, very good decision for the company. And we kept our bar high. He had worked at Apple for many years, and then once we started meeting other people from Apple, and again, Nikhil worked at Apple, but we actually haven't hired anyone from Nikhil's network at Apple. But it's just kind of the network effects of like, what's up, Apple, that sort of thing for the men and women we've been able to hire from Apple and other companies, that the network effects start to come. And so actually, I was saying earlier, we got introduced to Danielle, our EPM. So she was interviewing the same time as Nico, our mechanical engineer, and they knew each other. And so they ended up joining, I think, within 2 weeks of each other, and them both interviewing at the same time kind of, again, added to the network effects.
That just places more emphasis on that early, team, because that team attracts more people. Question over here.
So a follow-up to that question. How do you interview successfully for a crucial hire when you don't have the skills to evaluate them?
Great question.
That was my question.
You have to be resourceful within your network. And so kind of using, I'll give an example of our first machine intelligence engineer, which, something that's very hard, very technical, something that we needed expertise to make sure this person was actually good. And so, again, the first person that I tried to recruit for this role was a cousin of someone I went to college with. So again, just mining my LinkedIn network for someone. That person, I forget how we determined he was good, but he's good. Anyway, he turned us down. But we hired him as a consultant on like an hourly basis to interview candidates. And so he again, turned us down, still was working at another company, but at night he would do a phone screen with machine intelligence engineers. And there was this person, our first machine intelligence engineer, who had a bad resume, similar to none of the companies were that interesting. It didn't look like he was that good on paper, like the opposite of someone that I would want a phone screen. But he did a technical phone screen with our person, our consultant, and this guy's like, he's really good. You should fly him in immediately. And we flew him in from New York, and a few weeks later he started, and he was amazing. And so we were very lucky and kind of resourceful within our network to hire people and bring on consultants for areas where we didn't have expertise. And same was true for mechanical. We were working with this consultancy firm that was helping us with mechanical at the time, so we had them interview our mechanical engineer candidates.
I think we have time for one more question.
So you talk about hiring people for technical skills, and I'm wondering about for leadership skills. And I'm curious for you, what is the one skill that you find is least likely to be held by people that you end up having to help them within the context of working?
Sorry, can you explain the second half a little?
What is the one skill that you consistently see managers, people developers not have, and you end up working with them to build?
Yeah, I'm not, I think helping get people mentorship when they want it or need it can be very helpful. I think something just on like reference checking managers and leaders in particular, I try for our one director who's in the room, our one VP who's in the room and one director, like I tried to talk to as many people as possible. I'd asked for references, I didn't ask for references and found people who'd work for them. And like it's good to try and find someone that didn't like working with someone and hearing about that experience. And so I think kind of reference checking and learning as much as possible from someone in a leadership. We don't reference check every engineer, but we do for every kind of leadership position. I think that can be so important.
But do the leaders at this, your company or any other company that you've been at, is there some sort of, and deficiency is the wrong word, but like, is it harder for lots of hires in the early days to do certain things? Like, is there sort of the repeating deficiency again that you see, or is it just across the board?
I mean, I think a hard challenge, and again, we're still so early stage at June that it hasn't hit us up, but I think a very hard challenge can be the transition from individual contributor to manager. And some people think that the only way to progress in your career is to go to that next step and become a manager. And that's something that I want to fight tooth and nail to not be true, because I think that individual contributors, should have an endless career path to making as much money as possible at kind of the highest level. And I think it frustrates me when great individual contributors think that they have to be managers to kind of level up. So a lot of people go down that path when they weren't meant to be managers. But then on the flip side, there's people that were meant to be managers and kind of are excelling into it. And so kind of getting them the right mentorship to excel and learn into that role is very important.
Well, I want to sum up just a little bit about what we've heard from Matt. First is get some sneakers that people will pay attention to. But honestly, it sounds like always be recruiting. Jewish holidays, weekends, dinners.
I'm hiring a software engineering project manager, a machine intelligence engineer.
We're all going to end up working for Matt Van Horn, that's for sure. 50% of your time, if you're the founder, CEO, that's a good benchmark, to spend on recruiting.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's really hard. It's exhausting. Getting no is really, especially when you're getting no from all the VCs too. And that's your job, is to get told no all day. But you got to fight through and try and persevere. And eventually someone will say yes, right?
There you go. Someone will say yes. Matt Van Horn, thank you so much.
Thank you.